The summer heat clung to the cracked asphalt of Route 42, a dusty stretch cutting through the heart of Springfield, Ohio. It was July 2015, and Sarah Thompson sat in the passenger seat of a beat-up Chevy Impala, her jaw clenched so tight it ached. Her husband, Michael Carter, gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. The air between them crackled with venom, each word they spat at each other. A shard of glass meant to cut deep, and 10 years of marriage had turned them into strangers who knew precisely how to hurt one another. "You're a liar, Michael," Sarah hissed, her voice low and sharp. "You always have been. You think I don't see through you." Her dark hair fell in tangled waves over her shoulders, and her green eyes burned with fury. She leaned closer, her breath hot against his ear. "I'm done pretending. This marriage is over." Michael's lips curled into a sneer, but his eyes stayed on the road. "Good. Whoever backs out of this divorce is a damn fool, Sarah. I'd rather die than stay chained to you." His voice was cold, but there was a tremor, a crack that betrayed the weight of their shared history. He was handsome once, with sharp cheekbones and a boyish grin, but now his face was etched with exhaustion, his brown hair flecked with early gray at 27. They went to the Clark County Courthouse to sign the papers that would end it all. The radio blared a staticky country song, but neither heard it. Instead, they filled the car with their cacophony curses, accusations, and the ghosts of a decade's worth of fights. "You never loved me." Sarah snapped her fingers, digging into the armrest. "You used me, Michael. Admit it." He laughed, a bitter sound that made her skin crawl. "You're not exactly a saint, Sarah. You've got your own secrets, don't you? Or do you think I'm blind?" His words hit like a punch, and she felt the familiar sting of tears she refused to let fall. They'd been here countless times, tearing each other apart until there was nothing left but raw wounds. The road curved ahead, lined with cornfields stretching into the horizon. Sarah's mind raced back to the early days when Michael's smile could light up a room, when she believed he saw her, really saw her. But those moments were buried under years of resentment, of late-night arguments and broken dishes. They'd met in high school, two kids from the wrong side of Springfield, drawn together by shared anger and a desperate need to escape. But love, if it ever existed, had long since turned to ash. "You're pathetic," she said, her voice trembling with rage. "You think you're better than me? You're nothing, Michael. Nothing." She wanted to hurt him, to make him feel the weight of her pain. He opened his mouth to retort, but the words never came. A deafening horn blared, and Sarah's head snapped forward. A fuel truck, massive and gleaming, swerved across the center line, its tires screeching as it barreled toward them. Time slowed. Sarah's breath caught in her throat, her heart pounding like a war drum. Michael's eyes widened, and in that split second, something shifted in his face. Fear, yes, but also something softer, something she hadn't seen in years. Without a word, he yanked the steering wheel hard to the right, turning his side of the car into the truck's path. The impact was catastrophic, a sickening crunch of metal, a flash of fire, and then darkness. Sarah's eyes snapped open. She was no longer in the mangled Chevy. The air was warm, heavy with the scent of honeysuckle. She stood on her front porch, the paint peeling under her sneakers, a familiar ache in her chest. It was 2005, the summer before her senior year at Lincoln High. Her hands trembled as she touched her face, smooth, unlined 16 again. The world around her was vivid, the hum of cicadas, the distant bark of a neighbor's dog, the faded American flag flapping on the porch. She was alive. She was reborn. Her mind reeled. How was this possible? Was it a dream? A hallucination? No, the details were too sharp, the chipped railing under her fingers, the faint hum of a lawnmower down the street. She remembered the crash, Michael's sacrifice. Why had he done it? To save her for a fleeting 0.01 seconds. The thought gnawed at her, stirring a mix of gratitude and fury. She didn't ask for his heroism, didn't want his pity. But here she was given a second chance, a cosmic reset she didn't understand but wouldn't waste. As she stood there trying to make sense of everything, a memory surfaced, a whispered tale from her grandmother, a woman who believed in signs and spirits. Sometimes, she'd said, the universe gives you a do-over, but only if you've got unfinished business. Sarah's unfinished business was clear, a life overshadowed by her sister Emily, a marriage built on lies, and a family that had never seen her worth. This time she'd rewrite her story no matter the cost. Across the street, a group of kids rode by on bikes, laughing and shouting. Sarah watched them, her heart heavy with purpose. If you're watching this unfold, she thought, you're part of my story now. Hit that like button if you're rooting for me to take control. Drop a comment, tell me what you'd do with a second chance. Subscribe to this channel because trust me, this is just the beginning of how I will change everything. The sun beat down Springfield's quiet streets, turning the asphalt into a shimmering mirage. Sarah leaned against the porch railing, her mind still spinning from the impossible truth she was 16 again in the summer of 2005. The world felt familiar and alien. Her childhood home, a squat two-story with faded siding, stood unchanged, but the weight of her past life pressed against her chest. She was reborn, but why? And how? The question hung unanswered, a puzzle she'd have to solve later. For now, she needed to ground herself to navigate this second chance. Footsteps crunched on the gravel path leading to the porch. Sarah's breath caught as Michael Carter appeared, his lanky frame unchanged from high school brown hair falling into his eyes, a faded Nirvana t-shirt clinging to his shoulders. He held a wilted bouquet of daisies, their petals drooping in the heat. "Hey, Sarah," he said, his voice tentative but familiar. "I was thinking, maybe we could give it a shot, you know us." Her heart stuttered. It was the exact moment from 10 years ago when he'd asked her out after she'd confessed her crush and been rejected. But this time his eyes held something new, a flicker of recognition, a shadow of the man who'd died beside her in that Chevy. He was reborn too. The realization hit her like a cold wave. Their eyes locked, and in that instant they both knew. No words were needed. The shared weight of their past life hung between them, heavy and unspoken. Sarah's mind flashed to the sketches she'd found in their previous life, hidden in Michael's safe. Dozens of pencil drawings of Emily, her twin sister, her face captured in soft lines and careful shading. With her perfect grades and piano solos, Emily was the daughter their mother, Linda, adored. Sarah had always lived in her shadow, but those sketches revealed the truth: Michael had never loved her. He'd married her because she looked like Emily, who'd turned him down. The betrayal cut deeper than any fight they'd ever had. "You bastard," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling with rage. Without thinking, she stepped forward and slapped him, her palm stinging against his cheek. Michael flinched, his daisies dropping to the ground. "What the hell, Sarah?" He snapped, his hand flying to his face. But she wasn't done. She slapped him again, harder, her nails grazing his skin. "You think you can waltz back here and start over? After everything?" Michael's eyes darkened, his shock giving way to anger. He grabbed her wrists, not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to stop her. "What's wrong with you? Are you crazy?" His voice cracked, betraying the same turmoil she felt. Sarah yanked free, her chest heaving. She spotted the daisies on the ground and stomped them into the dirt. "You loved her, didn't you, Emily? Not me. Never me." His face paled, and for a moment he looked like the boy she'd once loved, vulnerable and caught. But then his jaw tightened and he stepped closer, his voice low. "You don't know what you're talking about, Sarah. But fine, you want the truth." "Yes, I loved Emily. I went to her first back then. She said no, and I saw you. You looked just like her. I thought maybe—" He trailed off, his eyes dropping to the crushed flowers. Sarah's vision blurred with tears she refused to shed. "You thought you could use me as a substitute. You're disgusting." Her voice broke, but she straightened, channeling her pain into fury. "You married me because I was her shadow. 10 years, Michael. 10 years of fights, of hating each other because you couldn't let her go." Michael's shoulders slumped, but he didn't deny it. He said quietly that I didn't mean it to be like that. I could move on. "But you weren't easy to love, Sarah. You pushed me away too." His words stung, and she hated that there was truth in them. Their marriage had been a war, neither lashing out nor willing to bend. She turned away, her hands shaking. "Get out of my sight," she said, her voice cold. "We're done, Michael, in this life and the last." He stood there momentarily, then turned and walked away, the daisies left in the dirt. Sarah's heart pounded as she watched him go, her mind racing. She remembered the crash, his last act of sacrifice. Why had he done it? Guilt, love, or just instinct? The question gnawed at her, but she pushed it aside. She had bigger battles to fight. Inside the house was quiet, the air thick with the scent of lemon cleaner and neglect. Sarah's eyes drifted to the living room, where a framed photo of Emily sat on the mantel, her sister smiling in her debate team blazer, her dark hair pulled into a neat bun. Sarah's own images were nowhere to be seen. Linda, their mother, had always made it clear Emily was the star, the prodigy destined for greatness. Sarah was the afterthought, relegated to the attic while Emily got the best room food and everything. Sarah climbed the stairs to her attic bedroom, a cramped space with a sagging cot and a single bulb flickering overhead. She sat on the cot's edge, her mind drifting to Emily's fate in their past life. The golden girl, the one everyone loved, had climbed to the roof of Lincoln High after acing her SATs and jumped no note, no explanation, just a shattered body and a family left in ruins. Sarah had spent years replaying those moments, searching for clues. She saw it clearly. Reborn Emily's perfection was a prison built by Linda's relentless expectations. A memory surfaced Emily at 14, sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes dull as Linda praised her latest piano award. Sarah had watched from the doorway unnoticed as Emily's hands trembled under the table. "I carved something under my bed," Emily had whispered to her once years later in a rare moment of openness. Did you ever see it? Sarah hadn't, but now she knew she had to. She needed to understand her sister's pain to see if she could save her this time. As Sarah lay back on the cot, the weight of her rebirth settled over her. Perhaps the universe had given her this chance because her grandmother's stories of cosmic do-overs were true. Her unfinished business was clear: to break free from Emily's shadow, to confront the family that had crushed her, and maybe to save her sister from herself. But Michael's presence complicated everything. He was reborn too, carrying his own regrets. What did he want to save Emily, to redeem himself? Sarah didn't trust him, but she couldn't ignore the flicker of hope in his eyes. She closed her eyes, the attic's silence wrapping around her. This time she wouldn't be the forgotten daughter, the substitute wife. She'd rewrite her fate, and no one, not Michael, Linda, or Emily, would stand in her way. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the cracked sidewalk in front of Sarah Thompson's house in Springfield, Ohio. It was July 2005, and the air was thick with the hum of cicadas and the distant rumble of a passing train. Sarah stood on her porch, her sneakers scuffing against the peeling paint, her mind still reeling from her confrontation with Michael Carter. The sting of her palm against his cheek lingered, as did the bitter truth he'd confessed: he'd only pursued her because she looked like her twin sister Emily, the girl he'd loved and lost. The memory of those sketches, Emily's face captured in soft pencil lines hidden in Michael's safe, burned in Sarah's chest like a coal. She wasn't his choice. She was his consolation prize. Sarah's green eyes narrowed as she stared down the street where Michael had disappeared, his wilted daisies still crushed in the dirt. Her heart pounded a mix of rage and something deeper, something she didn't want to name. Why had he yanked the wheel in that crash, taking the hit to save her guilt duty, or some twisted remnant of love? The question gnawed at her, but she pushed it aside. She wasn't here to unravel Michael's heart. She was here to rewrite her own story, to claw her way out of the shadows that had defined her life. Inside her head, her grandmother's voice echoed a memory from a long-ago summer by the Ohio River. "The universe doesn't give second chances lightly, Sarah," she'd said, her eyes sharp with old wisdom. "If you're sent back, it's because you've got debts to settle, wrongs to right." Sarah hadn't believed her then, but now, standing in her 16-year-old body with a decade of pain behind her, she felt the truth of it. Her debts were clear: a family that had treated her like an afterthought, a sister who'd outshone her at every turn, and a husband who'd used her as a stand-in. She'd settle those debts this time, no matter what it took. She turned toward the house, its faded siding and sagging gutters a mirror of her fractured family. The front door creaked as she pushed it open, revealing the living room where a single photo of Emily sat on the mantel, her smile polished and perfect in her debate team blazer. Sarah's own face was absent, as always. Her mother, Linda, had made it clear since they were kids: Emily was the prodigy, the one destined for an Ivy League future, while Sarah was the troublemaker, the one who didn't belong. Sarah's sneakers thudded up the narrow stairs to the attic, her so-called bedroom. The space was cramped, barely big enough for a sagging cot and a wobbly desk piled with old textbooks. A bulb dangled from the ceiling, casting a weak glow over the peeling wallpaper. She sat on the cot, her fingers tracing the frayed blanket, and her mind drifted to the crash. Michael's face in that final moment, pale, resolute, almost tender, haunted her. She hated him for it. She hadn't asked for his sacrifice, hadn't wanted his pity. But now, reborn, she saw it as a challenge. If the universe thought she needed saving, she'd prove it wrong. Her thoughts shifted to Emily, the sister who'd always been the sun to her shadow. In their past life, Emily had seemed untouchable, a straight-A student, a piano virtuoso, the pride of Lincoln High. But Sarah remembered the cracks, the way Emily's hands shook during recitals, the hollow look in her eyes when Linda praised her. And then the unthinkable Emily's leap from the school roof after acing her SATs, leaving nothing but questions and a grieving family. Sarah had spent years replaying those moments, searching for answers. Now she wondered if her rebirth was tied to Emily's death. Could she save her sister, or was she here to tear everything down? The sound of the front door slamming jolted her back to the present. Linda's voice echoed from downstairs, sharp and impatient. "Emily, get down here. Your tutor's coming in 10 minutes." Sarah's jaw tightened. No call for her, of course. She was invisible unless she was in trouble. She stood, her resolve hardening. If this were her second chance, she'd use it to expose the lies that had broken her, starting with Michael. She slipped out of the house and headed to the local diner, a greasy spoon called Mel's, where kids from Lincoln High hung out. Michael was there, slouched in a corner booth, nursing a Coke. His cheek still bore a faint red mark from her slap. Sarah slid into the seat across from him, her eyes cold. "You don't get to walk away that easy," she said. "Can you show up with flowers and pretend we're starting over?" Michael's gaze met hers, and she saw it again, that flicker of recognition, the weight of their shared past. "Sarah, I know you're mad, I get it, but I came back for a reason." His voice was low, earnest. "I failed Emily last time. I let her slip away. I thought marrying you would keep her close, but I screwed it up. I hurt you. I'm sorry." His apology caught her off guard, but she didn't let it show. "Sorry doesn't cut it, Michael. You used me. You married me because I looked like her. And now what? You're here to save her. You think you're some hero?" She leaned forward, her voice a hiss. "You don't know anything about her, or me." Michael's hands tightened around his glass. "Maybe I don't, but I know I messed up. I'm trying to make it right, Sarah, for her, for you." His eyes searched hers, and for a moment she saw the boy she'd fallen for in high school, the one who'd made her laugh with dumb jokes and stolen glances. But that boy was gone, buried under a decade of lies. Sarah stood her chair, scraping against the linoleum. "Stay out of my way, Michael. You want to play save, you're fine. But don't expect me to thank you." She stormed out, her heart racing. As she walked back through Springfield's quiet streets, the weight of her rebirth settled over her. She wasn't just here to survive, she was here to fight. For herself, for Emily, for the life she deserved. And if Michael got in her way, she'd burn him down too. The Thompson house sat quietly under the Ohio dusk, its windows glowing faintly against the deepening blue. Sarah stood in the attic, her makeshift bedroom, staring at the cracked mirror propped against the wall. Her reflection showed a 16-year-old girl with sharp green eyes and dark hair tied back in a messy ponytail. But inside, she carried the scars of a decade-long marriage and a lifetime of being second best. It was July 2005, and she was reborn, given a chance to rewrite her fate. But the house around her was a reminder of everything she'd fought to escape, a family that saw her as a burden, a sister who outshone her, and a mother whose love was reserved for someone else. Downstairs, Linda's voice cut through the silence. "Emily, your dinner's ready. I made your favorite grilled chicken with quinoa." The words were warm, almost tender, but they weren't for Sarah. She crept to the top of the stairs, peering down at the kitchen where Emily sat, her head bowed over a textbook. Emily was her twin, identical in face, but worlds apart in everything else. Where Sarah was wild and defiant, Emily was polished, obedient, the perfect daughter. Linda hovered over her, brushing a strand of hair from her face, her smile soft with pride. Sarah's stomach twisted. She couldn't remember the last time Linda had looked at her like that. Her meals were leftovers, cold scraps shoved onto a chipped plate, while Emily got fresh-cooked dinners tailored to her needs. The attic was Sarah's domain, a cramped space with a cot and a single bulb, while Emily's bedroom downstairs had a plush bed and a piano Linda had bought for her lessons. The unfairness of it burned, but it wasn't new. What was new was Sarah's resolve to fight back. She descended the stairs, her sneakers soft against the worn wood. In the kitchen, Linda barely glanced at her. "What do you want, Sarah?" she snapped, her voice sharp as a blade. Linda was a wiry woman in her 40s, her blonde hair pulled into a tight bun, her eyes constantly searching for flaws. "I'm busy with Emily. She's got a mock SAT tomorrow." Sarah leaned against the counter, her gaze flicking to the glass of milk on the table meant for Emily. "Just hungry," she said, her voice deceptively calm. Without warning, she grabbed the glass and smashed it onto the floor, the milk splattering across the tiles. Emily flinched, her eyes wide, but she said nothing. Linda's face turned scarlet. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she shrieked, stepping toward Sarah. Sarah didn't back down. "If I don't get milk, neither does she," she said, her voice cold. Linda's hand shot out, aiming for Sarah's cheek, but Sarah dodged, her reflexes sharp from years of avoiding blows. "Touch me again, and I'm calling the cops," she warned, pulling her phone from her pocket. Linda froze, her hand trembling in midair. Sarah saw fear in her mother's eyes for the first time, and it felt like a small victory. She turned and ran to the attic, slamming the door behind her. Her heart pounded, not from fear but from exhilaration. In her past life, she'd taken Linda's slaps, neglect, and endless comparisons to Emily. Not this time. She sat on the cot, her mind drifting to Emily's fate. The memory of her sister's suicide haunted her, Emily's body, broken on the pavement, the crowd's screams, Linda's wails. Sarah had been blamed as always. "Why wasn't it you?" Linda had screamed, her hands around Sarah's throat. But now Sarah saw the truth. Emily had been crushed by the weight of perfection. A soft knock broke her thoughts. Emily stood in the doorway, her face pale, her dark hair falling over her shoulders. "Why'd you do that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Sarah studied her, searching for the sister she'd never truly known. "Because I'm done being invisible," she said. "You've got everything moms love, dads praise, the whole damn world. What do I get?" "This," she gestured to the attic, her voice bitter. Emily's eyes dropped to the floor. "Do you want this?" she murmured. "Mom watches me all the time. Every move, every grade. I can't mess up, Sarah. I carved something under my bed last year. Help me? I thought you'd see it." Her voice cracked and Sarah's breath caught. She hadn't known. In their past life, she'd been too consumed by her own pain to notice Emily's. Now she saw the truth. They were both prisoners in different cages. "I didn't see it," Sarah admitted, her voice softer. "But I'm here now, and I'm not letting Mom or anyone break us again." Emily nodded, a flicker of hope in her eyes, but she turned and left without another word. Sarah lay back on the cot, her mind racing. She thought of Michael, his apology at the diner, his claim that he'd come back to save Emily. She didn't trust him, but his words had stirred something in her, a need to understand why they'd both been reborn. The next morning, Sarah slipped out before dawn, heading to the library to clear her head. Springfield's library was a squat brick building, its shelves lined with worn books and the faint hum of fluorescent lights. She found a corner and pulled out a notebook, sketching a plan. If she was going to rewrite her fate, she needed to dismantle the system that had crushed her. Linda's favoritism, Howard's absence, Emily's pressure, it all had to go. But she also needed to protect herself. The weight of her past life's pain, her fights with Michael, her mother's slaps pressed against her, a reminder of her own fragility. She remembered a school counselor's words from her past life. "You're carrying too much, Sarah. It's okay to hurt." Back then, she'd brushed it off, but now she felt it, a tightness in her chest, a fear that her anger might consume her. She pushed it down, focusing on her plan. She'd start small, defy Linda, take back her space, and watch for cracks in Emily's facade. Maybe she could find peace if she could save her sister while breaking their mother's control. As she left the library, the morning sun glinted off the Ohio River in the distance. Springfield was a town of broken dreams, where kids like her and Emily were expected to rise above or sink below. Sarah wouldn't sink. Not this time. She'd fight for herself, Emily, and the truth that had been buried too long. The twilight sky over Springfield, Ohio, painted the Thompson house in shades of lavender and gold. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of grilled chicken and the faint hum of a window air conditioner struggling against the July 2005 heat. Sarah sat on her attic cot, her fingers tracing the frayed edges of a blanket, her mind still churning from her confrontation with her mother Linda and the shattering of Emily's milk glass. The act had been impulsive, a spark of defiance against years of neglect. But Emily's quiet confession afterward, "I carved 'help me' under my bed," had shifted something in Sarah. Her sister, the golden child, wasn't just a rival, she was a prisoner too. Sarah slipped down the stairs, her sneakers silent on the worn wood. The kitchen was empty now, Linda having retreated to her bedroom in a huff after Sarah's threat to call the cops. Emily sat at the dining table, her dark hair falling over her face as she stared at a calculus textbook. The sight was painfully familiar. Emily was always studying and perfect, while Sarah was left to scavenge scraps. But tonight Sarah saw her differently. Emily's hands trembled slightly, her pencil hovering over a blank page, her eyes distant. "Emily," Sarah said softly, leaning against the doorway. Her sister flinched, her head snapping up. Their identical green eyes met for a moment, and Sarah saw a flicker of fear, then resignation. "What do you want?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might summon Linda's wrath. Sarah crossed the room and sat across from her, the table a barrier between them. "I want to know what you meant about the carving. Help me. What's going on with you?" Her tone was gentle but firm, contrasting the anger she'd unleashed on Michael and Linda. She needed answers not just for Emily but for herself. If they were reborn and carried the weight of their past lives, they could break free together. Emily's gaze dropped to the table, her fingers tightening around the pencil. "You wouldn't understand," she murmured. "You've always been free. You do what you want, Sarah. You fight back. I can't." Her voice cracked and she looked away, her shoulders hunching as if bracing for a blow. Sarah's chest tightened. She'd spent years resenting Emily, envying her place as Linda's favorite, but now she saw the cost of that pedestal. "Try me," Sarah said, leaning forward. "I'm not the kid you think I am. Not anymore." She hesitated, then added, "I know about your and the roof. I was there, Emily, in our last life. I saw what happened." Her voice wavered, the memory of Emily's broken body flashing through her mind. Her sister's face unrecognizable. The crowd's screams. Linda's accusations. "Why did you do it?" Emily's breath hitched, and for a moment Sarah thought she'd shut down. But then her sister spoke, her words tumbling like a dam breaking. "I remembered our past life when I was 3, she said, her voice low and raw. "I was playing with blocks and suddenly I saw it all. Mom's voice, her eyes the way she'd stand over me at night watching, whispering, 'You're my genius, Emily. You have to be perfect.' I was just a kid, Sarah, but I knew I couldn't fail her. Ever." Sarah listened, her heart pounding. Emily's words painted a picture of a childhood Sarah had never seen, Linda's suffocating control, her constant surveillance. "She'd check my homework, my posture, my breathing," Emily continued. "If I got a B, she'd cry like I'd betrayed her. I carved 'help me' under my bed because I thought, maybe you'd see it, perhaps you'd save me." Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back. "But you were always so angry, so far away. I thought you hated me." Sarah's throat tightened. She had hated Emily, or thought she did. She'd seen her as the enemy who got everything while Sarah got nothing. But now she saw the truth. They were both victims of Linda's warped love. "I didn't know," Sarah said, her voice barely audible. "I was too busy surviving Mom to see you were drowning too." She reached out her hand, hovering over Emily's, but stopped short, unsure if the gesture would be welcome. Emily looked at her, her eyes searching. "Why are we back here, Sarah? Why us?" It was the question Sarah had been wrestling with, the mystery of their rebirth. She thought of their grandmother's stories, tales of second chances granted to those with unfinished business. "Maybe it's to fix what broke us," Sarah said. "Mom, Dad, this whole damn family. Or it's to save each other." Emily's lips trembled, but she nodded, a spark of hope flickering in her eyes. "I don't know if I can keep doing this," she whispered. "Being perfect. It's killing me." Sarah's resolve hardened. She'd spent her life fighting for scraps of attention, but this time she'd fight for both of them. "Then don't," she said. "Let me take some of the weight. We'll figure this out together." The next day, Sarah walked to Lincoln High, the school's red brick facade looming under a cloudy sky. She needed space to think, to plan. The halls were quiet, and summer classes were held in session for kids like Emily, who were prepping for the SATs. Sarah slipped into the library, finding a corner where she could be alone. She pulled out a notebook and began sketching a plan to defy Linda and dismantle the system that had pitted her against her sister. She'd start by taking back her place in the family, by making Linda see her even if it meant breaking her. But as she wrote, a memory surfaced, a school counselor's voice from her past life, soft and concerned. "You're carrying too much anger, Sarah. It's okay to feel hurt, to be scared." She'd ignored it then, but now her hands shook as she gripped the pen. The weight of her past life, Michael's betrayal, Linda's slaps, Emily's death was heavy, and she felt it pressing against her chest, a warning that her anger could consume her. She pushed it down, focusing on her goal. She'd save Emily, expose Linda, and maybe, just maybe, find a way to heal herself. Outside, the clouds broke and rain began to fall, a soft patter against the library windows. Sarah stared out at Springfield's familiar streets, a town where expectation often crushed dreams. She wouldn't let that happen again, not to her, not to Emily. They'd break free even if it meant tearing everything apart. The rain fell steadily over Springfield, turning the streets into a mosaic of puddles and reflected streetlights. Sarah stood under the awning of Mel's diner, her hoodie damp from the short walk from Lincoln High. It was late July 2005, and the world felt surreal. It was a second chance she was only beginning to understand. Her confrontation with Emily had left her raw, her sister's confession echoing in her mind. I carved "help me" under my bed. Sarah had always seen Emily as the enemy, but now she saw her as a mirror. Two girls broken by the same family fighting to survive in different ways. She pushed open the diner's door, the bell jingling above her. The smell of coffee and fried bacon hit her a comfort against the damp chill. The place was half empty, with a few truckers and high school kids scattered across the booths. Michael Carter sat in the corner, his hands wrapped around a mug, his brown hair falling into his eyes. He looked up as Sarah approached his face, a mix of wariness and hope. She slid into the booth across from him, her expression hard. "What do you want, Michael?" she asked, her voice low. "You keep showing up like a bad penny." Michael's jaw tightened, but his eyes were softer than she expected. "I need to talk to you, Sarah. About us, about Emily." His voice was earnest, and for a moment she saw the boy she'd loved in high school, the one who'd made her laugh with stupid impressions of their teachers. But that boy was gone, replaced by a man who'd married her for all the wrong reasons. Sarah leaned back, crossing her arms. "There's no us, Michael. You clarified that you only wanted me when you admitted because I looked like her." The words stung, but she kept her voice steady, refusing to let him see her hurt. She remembered the sketches of Emily in his safe, the way he'd looked at her sister with a longing Sarah could never match. "You're here to save her. That's why you're back." "Well, newsflash, Emily doesn't need your hero complex." Michael flinched, his hands tightening around the mug. "It's not about playing hero," he said, his voice low and rough. "I failed her, Sarah. In our last life, I watched her fall apart, and I did nothing. I went to her first, back in high school. I told her I liked her, and she smiled so kind, but she said she wasn't ready for anything. I was crushed. Then I saw you, and it was like seeing her but different. You were fire where she was calm. I could move on, but I was wrong. I hurt you, and I hate myself for it." His confession hung between them, heavy and raw. Sarah's chest tightened, mixed with anger, and something she couldn't name, pity maybe, or the ghost of old feelings. She remembered their marriage, the endless fights, the way they'd torn each other apart, but she also remembered his last act, swerving the car to save her. "Why'd you do it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, the crash. "You took the hit. Why?" Michael looked down at the table, his fingers tracing the rim of his mug. "I don't know," he admitted. "It wasn't planned. I saw the truck, and I thought of you, of all the ways I'd failed you. I couldn't let you die, Sarah, not like that." His eyes met hers, and she saw guilt there, but also something else, regret, maybe even love. It made her want to scream and run, but she stayed rooted, her heart tangled with emotions. "You don't get to redeem yourself by dying for me," she said, her voice sharp. "And you don't get to swoop in and save Emily now either. She's not your responsibility. She's mine." Her words were fierce, protective, a vow born from her new understanding of her sister's pain. Emily's confession had changed everything. Sarah wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. Michael leaned forward, his voice urgent. "I know I screwed up, Sarah, but I'm here now and I want to make it right. Not just for Emily, for you too. I came back for a reason. Maybe it's to fix what I broke." He hesitated, then added, "I talked to my cousin at the ice cream parlor. He said Emily's been different lately, quieter. I'm worried about her. And you? You're distinct too. What's your plan, Sarah? What are you going to do?" Sarah's eyes narrowed. She didn't trust him after everything, but his genuine concern for Emily stirred a flicker of doubt. Was he genuine, or was this another game? She thought of her grandmother's stories, the idea that rebirth was a chance to settle debts. Michael's debt was clear. He'd used her hurt, her failed Emily. But maybe he was trying to change. She pushed the thought aside, focusing on her own mission. "My plan," she said, her voice cold. "To make sure no one hurts us again. Stay out of my way, Michael. You've done enough damage." She stood her chair, scraping against the floor, and entered the rain. The cool drops stung her face, grounding her in the moment. She thought of Emily trapped in Linda's expectations, and her own attic cot symbolizing her invisibility. She remembered a moment from her past life, lying awake after a fight with Michael, her chest tight with panic. A counselor had once told her, "Anger can keep you alive, Sarah. but it can also eat you alive. She felt the weight of her rage and fear now, but she wouldn't let it stop her. As she walked through Springfield's wet streets, the neon sign of Mel's Diner faded behind her. The town was a patchwork of modest houses and fading dreams where kids like her and Emily were pushed to succeed or left to fail. Sarah wouldn't fail. She'd protect Emily, expose Linda's cruelty, and maybe find a way to forgive Michael, or at least understand him. The rain washed over her, a baptism of sorts, as she vowed to rewrite their story one defiant step at a time. The morning sun filtered through the dusty attic window, casting a pale glow over Sarah Thompson's cot in Springfield, Ohio. It was early August 2005, and the air was thick with the promise of another sweltering day. Sarah sat cross-legged on the sagging mattress, her dark hair tied back, her green eyes sharp with purpose. The past week's events, her confrontation with Michael at Mel's Diner, Emily's tearful confession about her carved plea for help, had lit a fire in her. She was reborn, given a second chance to rewrite her fate, and she wouldn't waste it. With its peeling paint and suffocating expectations, the Thompson house was a battlefield, and Sarah was ready to fight. Linda's voice rang out downstairs, sharp and commanding. "Emily, your piano lessons in an hour. Don't dawdle." Sarah's jaw tightened. No call for her as usual. Linda, her mother, had always treated her like an afterthought, saving her warmth for Emily, the perfect daughter. With its single bulb and chipped desk, Sarah's attic room was a stark contrast to Emily's plush bedroom downstairs, complete with a baby grand piano Linda had bought for her prodigy. But Sarah was done accepting scraps. She'd seen the cracks in Emily's facade, the trembling hands, the hollow eyes, and she knew her sister was drowning under Linda's pressure. This time Sarah would tear down the hierarchy that had crushed them both. She slipped out of the attic and into the kitchen, where Emily sat at the table, her calculus textbook open but untouched. Linda hovered nearby, chopping vegetables with a ferocity that matched her mood. "Sarah, what are you doing down here?" Linda snapped, barely glancing up. "You're not needed. Go back upstairs." Her tone was dismissive, as if Sarah were a stray dog wandering into the wrong yard. Sarah leaned against the counter, her gaze steady. "She said I'm not going anywhere," her voice calm but edged with steel. She spotted a glass of milk on the table meant for Emily's nutrition, and her lips curled into a defiant smile. Before Linda could react, Sarah grabbed the glass and hurled it to the floor. The glass shattered, milk splattering across the tiles like a burst of white paint. Emily gasped, her eyes wide, but she stayed silent, her hands clutching the textbook. Linda's face turned crimson. "Have you lost your mind?" she shrieked, stepping toward Sarah, her hand raised. Sarah didn't flinch. She pulled her phone from her pocket, holding it up like a shield. "Hit me and I'm calling 911, she said, her voice low and dangerous. "I did it before, and I'll do it again." She was referring to the night she'd called the police after Linda's last slap, leading to her mother's 24-hour detention. The memory of Linda's shock, handcuffed and led away, fueled Sarah's resolve. Linda's hand froze, her eyes darting between Sarah and the phone. The kitchen was silent for a moment, the air thick with tension. Then Linda lowered her arm, her face twisting with rage and something else, fear. "You're a disgrace," she hissed, but her voice lacked its usual venom. Sarah smirked, savoring the power shift. "If I'm a disgrace, what does that make you?" she said, turning on her heel and heading for the door. She didn't go back to the attic. Instead, she walked to the center of Springfield, a small ice cream parlor called Scoops, owned by Michael's cousin Jake. The shop was a bright spot in the town's faded downtown, with pastel walls and a jukebox playing oldies. Jake, a lanky guy with a quick grin, was behind the counter, scooping strawberry ice cream for a kid. "Sarah," he called, waving her over. "Are you looking for a job? We're short-staffed for the summer rush." Sarah hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, I'm in." A job meant money, independence, a way out of Linda's control. She spent the afternoon learning to scoop ice cream, her hands sticky with syrup, her mind racing with plans. She'd save every penny, build a life beyond the attic, and show Linda she wasn't invisible. But as she worked, her thoughts drifted to Emily. Her sister's confession had changed everything. Emily wasn't just the golden child. She was a victim too, trapped by Linda's obsession with perfection. That night, Sarah returned home late, her sneakers crunching on the gravel driveway. The house was quiet, but she could hear Linda's muffled voice from Emily's room lecturing about SAT scores. Sarah slipped into Emily's room after Linda left, finding her sister curled up on her bed, her face pale. "You okay?" Sarah asked, sitting on the edge of the mattress. Emily shook her head, her voice barely audible. "Mom won't stop. She says I'm letting her down if I don't get a perfect score. Her hands trembled and Sarah's heart ached. She remembered her own pain the nights she'd cried herself to sleep in the attic, ignored by Linda and their absent father, Howard. Sarah said, "We're getting out of this," her voice firm. "Both of us. I'm not letting her break you." Emily looked at her, her eyes searching. "Why are you doing this, Sarah? You've always hated me." Sarah swallowed hard, the truth heavy on her tongue. "I thought I did," she admitted. "But I was wrong. We're in this together now." She stood, her resolve hardening. She'd start by taking back her space in the house by making Linda see her. But as she climbed to the attic, a memory surfaced, a school counselor's voice from her past life, gentle but firm. "Your anger's a fire, Sarah. It can light your way or burn you down." Her chest tightened, a flicker of fear mingling with her defiance. She pushed it aside, focusing on her plan. She'd fight for Emily herself and the future they deserved. Outside, Springfield slept under a starless sky, a town where expectation often stifled dreams. Sarah lay on her cot, staring at the cracked ceiling, her mind a whirlwind of anger and hope. She was reborn. This time she'd rewrite their story no matter the cost. The Springfield Community Center buzzed with nervous energy, its auditorium packed with parents and students for the annual piano recital. It was mid-August 2005, and Sarah stood in the back, her arms crossed, watching Emily take the stage. Her sister's dark hair was pulled into a tight bun, her face pale under the harsh stage lights. The audience whispered, their eyes fixed on Emily Lincoln High's star, the girl destined for greatness. But Sarah saw what they didn't, the slight tremble in Emily's hands, and her shoulders stiffened as she sat at the piano. Linda stood nearby, her blonde hair gleaming, her smile a mask of pride and expectation. Sarah's stomach churned. She'd spent the past week defying Linda, taking a job at Scoops and claiming small victories like the milk glass incident. But Emily's confession about carving "Help Me" under her bed had shifted Sarah's focus. Her sister wasn't just the perfect daughter, she was a prisoner crushed by Linda's relentless demands. Sarah had vowed to save her, but standing here watching Emily's fingers hover over the keys, she felt a surge of doubt. Could she break the cycle that had destroyed them in their past life? Emily began to play a complex Chopin piece, her notes precise but strained. The audience leaned forward, captivated, but Sarah noticed the falter in Emily's rhythm, a missed note that tightened Linda's smile. When the piece ended, the crowd applauded, but Linda's clap was sharp, perfunctory. She hurried to Emily's side, whispering something that made her daughter's face fall. Sarah edged closer, catching Linda's words. "You can't mess up like that, Emily. Not now, not with college applications coming." Emily nodded, her eyes downcast, and Sarah's heart clenched. She remembered her past life, how Linda's neglect had left her invisible while Emily's every move was scrutinized. She followed them backstage, where Emily stood alone, her hands twisting together. "You did great," Sarah said, stepping forward. Emily's head snapped up, her green eyes wary. "It wasn't good enough," she murmured. "Mom says I have to be perfect." Sarah's jaw tightened. "She's wrong," she said, her voice low but fierce. "You're killing yourself for her, Emily. I know what it's like. I saw what happened. Before." She hesitated, the memory of Emily's suicide flooding back, her sister's body broken on the pavement, the crowd's screams. "You climbed that roof because of her, didn't you? Because you couldn't take it anymore." Emily's breath hitched, and for a moment she looked like she might bolt. But then her shoulders slumped, and she spoke, her voice barely audible. "I was 3 when I remembered our last life," she said. "I saw it all, Mom's voice and eyes telling me I had to be the best. She'd stand over my bed at night, checking if I was sleeping, whispering that I was her pride, her genius. If I failed, she'd cry like I'd broken her heart. I carved 'Help Me, Sarah' under my bed because I thought you'd see it. I thought you'd save me." Sarah's throat tightened, guilt and anger warring inside her. She'd been too consumed by her own pain to notice Emily's. "I didn't see it," she admitted, her voice cracking. "I was too busy hating you for getting everything I didn't. But I'm here now, Emily. I'm not letting her destroy you again." Emily's eyes searched hers, a flicker of hope battling her fear. "What if I can't escape her?" she whispered. "What if I'm not strong like you?" "You are strong," Sarah said, her voice firm. "You don't know it yet. Let me take some of the weight." She reached out, squeezing Emily's hand, and for the first time her sister didn't pull away. The moment felt fragile, a bridge between them, but Sarah knew it wasn't enough. She had to dismantle Linda's control to save Emily, which meant pushing harder. The next day, Sarah skipped school and headed to Scoops, where her apron was stained with chocolate syrup. The work was grueling, but freeing each scoop a step toward independence. Jake Michael's cousin noticed her intensity. "You're a natural," he said, grinning. "But you look like you're fighting a war." Sarah forced a smile, her mind on Emily. She was saving money, planning to rent a place where she and her sister could escape Linda's reach. But as she worked, a memory surfaced, a gentle but piercing counselor's voice from her past life. "You're running on anger, Sarah. It's keeping you alive, but it's also eating you up." Her hands shook as she scooped ice cream, the weight of her rage and fear pressing against her chest. That evening, Sarah returned home to find Linda in the living room, her eyes red from arguing with Howard, their father, who was away at his factory again. Emily sat on the couch, her textbook open, her face blank. Sarah seized the moment. "I'm moving into Emily's room tonight," she announced, her voice steady. Linda's head snapped up. "What, you're not touching her room? That's for her studies." Sarah stepped closer, her eyes locked on Linda's. "I'm not asking," she said. "I'm done sleeping in the attic. Either I get a real room or call the cops again, your choice." Linda's face paled, her hands trembling, but she didn't argue. Sarah grabbed her things and marched to Emily's room, her heart pounding with triumph and fear. She was taking back her place, but the counselor's warning echoed in her mind. How long could she keep this up before her anger consumed her? Outside Springfield streets were quiet, the town's modest houses a testament to its working-class struggles. Sarah stood in Emily's room, the plush bed contrasting with her attic cot. She was fighting for both of them, but the weight was heavy. She'd save Emily, expose Linda, and carve out a future where they could both be free no matter what it took. The late August sun hung low over Springfield, Ohio, casting a golden haze across the town's tired streets. In Thompson's house, Sarah stood in front of Emily's bedroom mirror with scissors. It was 2005, and the weight of her rebirth pressed against her chest, a second chance to rewrite her fate, to save her sister, and to dismantle the family that had broken them both. Emily's confession at the piano recital had solidified Sarah's plan to free her sister from Linda's suffocating expectations. She'd have to take her place. She raised the scissors, her green eyes steady, and began cutting her dark hair to match Emily's short, neat style. Strand by strand, she shed her old self, becoming her sister's mirror image. Sarah's rebellion had already shaken the house, smashing Emily's milk glass, taking a job at Scoops, and claiming Emily's room. Each act chipped away at Linda's control, but it wasn't enough. Emily was still trapped, her trembling hands and hollow eyes a reminder of the roof she'd climbed in their past life. Sarah's plan was bold, reckless. Even she'd become Emily, exploit Linda's favoritism, and give her sister a chance to escape. She slipped into one of Emily's plain white dresses, the fabric soft against her skin, and studied her reflection. The resemblance was uncanny, same green eyes, same sharp cheekbones. Who could tell them apart now? Downstairs, the dining room was a battlefield. Linda sat at the head of the table, her blonde hair pulled tight, her eyes darting between Emily and a stack of SAT prep books. Howard, their father, was there for once. His factory work kept him away most days. He was a broad man with thinning hair, his face etched with exhaustion. Emily sat quietly, her hands folded, her face blank. Sarah walked in her posture, mimicking Emily's perfect poise, and sat across from her. Linda didn't notice the switch. She focused on her golden child. "Emily, your tutor said you're slipping," she said, her voice sharp. "You need to focus." Sarah, as Emily nodded calmly. "I know, Mom. I'm trying." Her voice was soft, practiced, a perfect imitation. Emily's eyes widened slightly, but she stayed silent, her hands trembling under the table. Howard frowned, sensing something off. "Where's Sarah?" he asked, glancing around. "Haven't seen her all day." Sarah seized the moment, her heart pounding. "Sarah's been disruptive," she said, her tone steady. "She's affecting my studies. I asked her to leave until after the SATs. She agreed, but needs support with living expenses, tuition, and housing for the year. I promised her $50,000. The number hung in the air, bold and audacious. Linda's face twisted in shock. $50,000 for that troublemaker." Howard's eyes narrowed. "Emily, that's too much. Sarah's your sister, sure, but kicking her out, that's harsh." Sarah kept her expression neutral, channeling Emily's calm. "It's for the family, Dad. If I'm going to ace the SATs, I need focus. Sarah understands. She said she'd tell everyone she left voluntarily if we help her." She paused, then added, "The media loves a good story. When I get top scores, they'll ask about our family. We don't want any gossip, do we?" The room went silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Howard's face darkened. He He was stingy, known for spending on himself, but not his family. Linda's eyes flickered with fear, her obsession with appearances overriding her anger. Fine, Howard muttered, rubbing his temples. But this better be worth it, Emily. Sarah nodded, her heart racing with triumph. She'd turned Linda's favoritism against her securing resources for Emily's escape. Later, Sarah found Emily in the backyard, sitting under a gnarled oak tree. The air was heavy with the scent of cut grass and distant rain. Sarah handed her a key, which was metal and cool against her palm. "This is for an apartment near the community college," she said. "I used my Scoops money and Jake's ID to rent it. It's yours, Emily. You're Sarah now. Live free." Emily's eyes widened, her fingers closing around the key. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Sarah said, "Because you're my sister," her voice soft but firm. "I didn't see your pain before, but I do now. You don't have to be perfect anymore. Go, start over." Emily's eyes filled with tears, and she lunged forward, hugging Sarah tightly. "I hate you sometimes," she murmured, "but I love you too." Sarah hugged her back, her throat tight. The moment was fleeting, but it felt like a promise, a new beginning for them both. Sarah returned to the house. Her steps were light, but her mind was heavy. She thought of her past life, the nights she'd lain awake in the attic, her chest tight with panic. A counselor had once told her, "Your anger's a shield, Sarah, but it's also a cage." Now, as she played Emily, she felt that cage tightening. She was fighting for both of them, but the weight of her deception was heavy. Could she keep this up without losing herself? Outside Springfield's streets glowed under the setting sun, a town of modest dreams and hidden struggles. Sarah stood in Emily's room, now hers, and looked out the window. She was no longer the forgotten daughter, but the cost of her rebellion was growing. She'd given Emily a way out, but the fight was far from over. Linda and Howard were still a threat, and Michael's lingering presence complicated everything. Sarah's resolve hardened. She'd rewrite their story no matter what it took. The air in the Thompson house was thick with tension, like a storm waiting to break. It was late August 2005, and Sarah stood in the kitchen, her hair cut to match Emily's, her white dress a perfect mimicry of her sister's style. She'd become Emily in her parents' eyes, exploiting Linda's favoritism to secure $50,000 for the real Emily's escape. The plan was working. Emily was now living as Sarah in a rented apartment near Springfield's community college, free from Linda's suffocating control. But Sarah's victory came with a cost, one she felt in the tightness of her chest, the sleepless nights haunted by memories of her past life. Linda stood at the stove, stirring a pot of soup with mechanical precision, her blonde hair frazzled, her eyes darting nervously. Howard's factory scandal had erupted the day before, sparked by Sarah's anonymous tip to a local gossip blog. She'd sent photos of Howard with his coworker, a married woman, to the woman's husband, and tipped off the authorities about illegal waste dumping at his factory. The fallout was swift. Police raided the factory, reporters swarmed, and Howard's reputation crumbled. He sat at the dining table now, his face haggard, nursing a beer. "This is your fault, Linda," he snapped. "None of this would have happened if you hadn't made a scene." Linda's spoon clattered against the pot. "My fault. You're the one sneaking around with that woman." Her voice was shrill, her hands trembling. Sarah, as Emily watched from the doorway, her expression calm but her heart racing. She'd orchestrated this chaos, and it was working. The family that had crushed her and Emily was unraveling thread by thread. She stepped into the kitchen, her voice soft but deliberate. "Mom, Dad, can we talk?" Linda's head snapped up, her eyes softening at the sight of Emily. "Of course, sweetheart," she said, her tone contrasting the venom she reserved for Sarah. Howard grunted, his gaze flickering to her. "What is it, Emily? I've got enough problems." Sarah sat at the table, folding her hands like Emily would. "I'm worried about my studies," she said, her voice steady. "The house is so tense lately. It's hard to focus. And I'm lactose intolerant, Mom. You've been giving me milk for years and it makes me sick. Didn't you know?" The accusation was calculated, a jab at Linda's neglect. In their past life, Sarah had learned Emily suffered from the same intolerance, a fact Linda ignored to keep up appearances. Linda's face paled, her hands gripping the counter. "Lactose intolerant. That's nonsense, Emily. You've been fine. I'd never hurt you." But her voice wavered, and Sarah saw the crack in her armor, guilt buried under years of denial. "You didn't know," Sarah said, her tone cool. "But you should have. I work so hard, Mom, and you can't even manage my meals right. Maybe Dad should hire a maid." Howard slammed his beer down. "A maid? We're bleeding money because of this factory mess, and you want a maid?" Sarah tilted her head, her expression innocent. "If Mom can't handle the house, shouldn't we fix it? I need a good environment to study. Parents are a child's first teachers. If you're failing, shouldn't you admit it? Her words were a knife cutting through Linda's pride. Linda's face twisted rage and shame warring in her eyes. She raised her hand, but Sarah dodged her reflexes sharp. "Don't," she warned, her voice cold. "You'll regret it." The air crackled with tension, and Howard stood his chair, scraping. "Enough, both of you, I'm leaving. I've got to salvage what's left of my business." He stormed out, slamming the door. Linda sank into a chair, her hands shaking. Sarah watched, her heart a mix of triumph and unease. She was breaking them, but the weight of her actions pressed against her. She remembered a counselor's words from her past life. "Your anger's a weapon, Sarah, but it can cut you too." Her hands trembled as she left the kitchen, the echo of her own rage lingering. Later at Scoops, Sarah worked her shift, her apron stained with ice cream. Michael showed up, his brown hair damp from the rain, his eyes searching. "Sarah, I know it's you," he said, his voice low. "I saw Emily at the college. She's different. What are you doing?" Sarah froze her scoop, hovering over a tub of vanilla. She hadn't expected him to notice so soon. "Mind your business," she said, her voice sharp. "You can't save her, Michael. Only she can." Michael's jaw tightened, but his eyes were soft, pleading. "I'm trying to make things right, Sarah. For her, for you. I failed you both before. Let me help." Sarah's chest tightened, a flood of emotions, anger, guilt, a flicker of old love threatening to overwhelm her. "You want to help?" she said, her voice cold. "Stay out of my way." She turned back to her work, her heart pounding. Michael lingered for a moment, then left, his footsteps fading into the rain. That night, Sarah lay in Emily's bed, the plush mattress contrasting with her attic cot. She thought of Emily now living as Sarah, free from Linda's control. But the cost was heavy. Sarah's deception and manipulation were eating at her. She saw flashes of her past life, Linda's slaps, Michael's betrayal, Emily's broken body. Her chest tightened, a panic attack creeping in. She breathed deeply, pushing it down. She was fighting for both of them and wouldn't stop now. Outside Springfield's lights flickered in the rain, a town where dreams were often drowned by expectation. Sarah closed her eyes, her resolve hardening. She'd broken the family, but the fight wasn't over. She'd protect Emily, expose Howard's hypocrisy, and carve out a future where they could both be free, no matter the cost to herself. The September dawn broke over Springfield, Ohio, painting the sky in hues of pink and amber. Inside the Thompson house, Sarah stood in Emily's bedroom. Her reflection in the mirror was a perfect imitation of her twin sister, short, dark hair, plain white dress, and green eyes, sharp with purpose. It was 2005, and her plan to rewrite her fate had reached a fever pitch. By assuming Emily's identity, Sarah had secured $50,000 for her sister's escape, exposed their father Howard's infidelity and factory violations, and turned their mother Linda's world upside down. Now, living as Sarah in a rented apartment near the community college, Emily is free from Linda's control. But the victory was bittersweet, and Sarah felt it in the tightness of her chest, the sleepless nights, haunted by ghosts of her past life. The house was a shadow of its former self. Linda moved through the kitchen like a ghost, her blonde hair unkempt, her eyes sunken from endless arguments with Howard. His factory had been shut down after Sarah's anonymous tips led to a police raid, and his affair had been splashed across local blogs, leaving him humiliated. The couple's fights echoed through the walls, a cacophony of blame and resentment. Sarah, as Emily, watched it all with a calculated calm, but inside she was unraveling. Each move she made, every jab at Linda's pride, every manipulation of Howard's guilt, took a toll, and she felt it in the way her hands shook, her breath caught. That morning, Linda stood at the stove, her hands trembling as she stirred oatmeal. "Emily, you need to eat," she said, her voice strained but still clinging to the role of doting mother. Sarah sat at the table, her posture perfect, her expression serene. "I'm not hungry, Mom," she said, her voice soft but edged with steel. "You've been giving me milk for years, knowing it makes me sick." "Why?" The accusation was deliberate, a reminder of Linda's neglect, not just of Sarah, but of Emily's needs. Linda's spoon clattered against the pot, her face paling. "That's not true," she stammered. "I'd never hurt you, Emily. You're my everything." But her eyes betrayed her guilt fear, a flicker of doubt. Sarah leaned forward, her gaze unrelenting. "You didn't know I'm lactose intolerant," she said. "You didn't care enough to notice. I'm trying to ace the SATs and you can't even manage my meals. Maybe Dad's right. Perhaps we need a maid." Linda's face twisted, rage and shame warring within her. A maid. After everything I've done for you? Her voice rose, but Sarah didn't flinch. She stood her movement slow and deliberate and stepped closer. If you're failing as a mother, shouldn't you admit it? She said, her voice cold. Parents are supposed to help, not hurt. Linda's hand twitched as if to strike, but Sarah's eyes held her in place, daring her to try. Linda backed down, her shoulders slumping, and Sarah felt a surge of triumph and a pang of guilt. She left the kitchen and headed to Scoop's, the ice cream parlor where she worked. The familiar routine, scooping chocolate fudge, wiping down counters, grounded her, but her mind was elsewhere. As he often was, Michael was there, sitting in a corner booth with a coffee. His brown hair was messy, his eyes tired but searching. "Sarah," he said, his voice low as she passed. "I know it's you. I saw Emily at the college. What are you doing? This game you're playing, it's dangerous." Sarah froze her scoop, hovering over a tub of vanilla. She hadn't expected him to keep pushing after telling him to stay out of her way. "It's not a game," she said, her voice sharp. "I'm saving her, Michael. Something you couldn't do." His face fell, and for a moment she saw the boy from their past life, the one who'd loved Emily and married Sarah as a substitute. But there was something new in his eyes, regret maybe, or a desperate need to make things right. "I'm trying to help," he said, standing to face her. "I failed you both before. I know that. But I came back for a reason, Sarah. I want to be better for her, for you." His voice cracked and Sarah's chest tightened, a flood of emotions threatening to spill over. She remembered their marriage, the fights, and his final act of sacrifice in the crash. "You don't get to decide what I need," she said, her voice trembling. "Stay out of my way." She returned to her work, but Michael's words lingered, stirring doubts. Was she pushing too hard, risking too much? She thought of her grandmother's stories, the idea that rebirth was a chance to settle debts. Her debt was to Emily, to free her from Linda's cage, but what about her own heart? She remembered a counselor's words from her past life. "Your anger's a fire, Sarah. It can light your way or burn you down." In Emily's bed, she felt that fire consuming her at night. Flashes of Emily's broken body haunted her dreams. Linda's screams and her own panic attacks. She woke gasping, her heart racing, the weight of her revenge pressing against her. At school, a counselor noticed her distraction during a study session. "You seem tense, Sarah," she said gently. "Is everything okay at home?" Sarah forced a smile, but her hands shook. "Just stress," she lied, but the counselor's concern echoed her own fears. She was breaking Linda, dismantling Howard, but at what cost to herself? She pushed the thought aside, focusing on her plan. The SATs were coming, and with them the final piece of her strategy. She'd keep playing Emily and pushing until the family was ashes. Outside Springfield's streets were quiet, the town's working-class struggles etched into its faded storefronts. Sarah walked home, the weight of her actions heavy on her shoulders. She was fighting for Emily and for herself, but the fire inside her was growing, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could control it. The October sky over Springfield, Ohio was a crisp blue, the air sharp with the first hint of autumn. The SATs were days away, and the Thompson house was a war zone of silence and resentment. Still posing as Emily, Sarah moved through the rooms with a calculated grace, her short hair and white dress a perfect disguise. Her plan had worked. Emily, living as Sarah in a rented apartment near the community college, was free from Linda's control, preparing to study biology at a university in Michigan. Howard's factory was shuttered, his affair exposed, and Linda was a shell of her former self, her eyes haunted by fear and doubt. But Sarah's victory came at a cost, one she felt in the sleepless nights, the panic attacks that gripped her in the dark. In the living room, Linda sat on the couch, her hands twisting a dish towel, her face lined with exhaustion. Howard was gone again, his latest fight with Linda ending in a slammed door and a promise to leave for good. Sarah, as Emily stood nearby, her expression serene, but her heart pounding. "Mom, you need to rest," she said, her voice soft but deliberate. "You're not helping me by falling apart." The words were a jab, a reminder of Linda's failure as a mother. Linda's eyes flickered with hurt, but she nodded, her defiance gone. Sarah's plan had been ruthless, exposing Howard's infidelity, tipping off the authorities about his factory, and manipulating Linda's obsession with appearances. Each move had chipped away at the family that had crushed her and Emily, but left Sarah hollow. She remembered Emily's confession, the carved plea under her bed. "Help me, Sarah." She'd saved her sister, but the weight of her actions pressed against her chest, a constant reminder of her own fragility. At night, she lay in Emily's bed, her dreams filled with flashes of their past life, Linda's slaps, Emily's broken body, Michael's sacrifice. She woke gasping, her heart racing, the counselor's words echoing, "Your anger's a cage, Sarah. You have to let it go." At Scoops, Sarah worked her shift, her apron stained with ice cream, her mind on the SATs. Michael was there as always, his presence a quiet constant. He didn't push, didn't ask questions, just watched her with a mix of concern and regret. "You're doing too much," he said one day, his voice low as she wiped down the counter. "I see it, Sarah. You're breaking yourself to save her." Sarah's hand stilled, her eyes meeting his. She said, "You don't know me," but her voice lacked conviction. Michael's eyes softened. "I'm trying to," he said. "I messed up before, but I'm here now. Let me help." Sarah shook her head, but his words stirred something, a flicker of the boy she'd loved who made her laugh before everything went wrong. She thought of his sacrifice in the crash, the way he'd swerved to save her. Maybe he was trying to redeem himself just as she was trying to redeem her past. But she couldn't trust him, not yet. "Just don't get in my way," she said, returning to her work. The day of the SATs arrived, a crisp Saturday morning. Sarah, as Emily, aced the test, her mind sharp despite her weight. She'd secured her own future at her dream university, a path she'd chosen in her past life but never fully embraced. Emily, as Sarah, had already left for Michigan, her train ticket tucked into her pocket, her eyes bright with hope for the first time. Sarah stood outside the testing center, the autumn breeze cool against her skin, and felt a rare moment of peace. She'd done it, she'd freed Emily, broken the family, and carved out a future. Years later, in 2013, Emily sat in a small apartment in Ann Arbor, her biology textbooks scattered across a desk. She lived as Sarah, trying to build an everyday life friend's research travel. But the nights were hard-haunted by memories of Linda's control, the roof she'd climbed in her past life. She couldn't sleep through the night, her chest tight with the weight of her new identity. One day a friend sent her a photo, a sharp-dressed woman in Chicago gold-rimmed glasses perched on her nose, her presence commanding. It was Sarah, now a lawyer, thriving in a world she'd built herself. Emily's hands trembled as she dialed Sarah's number, which she still knew by heart. The line connected, and Sarah's voice came through cool and distant. "Who is this?" Emily clutched the phone, her breath fast. "Sarah," she whispered, tears falling. "It's me." There was a long pause, then Sarah's voice softened. "Emily, I'm busy, but if you're not scared anymore, come home." Emily smiled through her tears, a weight lifted. "I'm coming," she said. They met in Springfield under the same gnarled oak tree where Sarah had given her the apartment key. Emily hugged her tightly, her voice breaking. "I hated you, Sarah, but I love you most." Sarah nodded, her eyes misty. "Same here, Em." They stood there, two sisters reborn, their pasts, a tangle of pain and love, their futures wide open. Springfield stretched out around them, a town of broken dreams and quiet hopes, and for the first time they felt free.